Hello guys and welcome to another tutorial. As you can see, many things have changed. I moved, I have been doing lots of projects that I will keep you updated at in the Discord channel, potentially here too. But here we are again. So in this case, we're going to be learning how to create a really good metal simulation with RBD. So I already made a tutorial previously. Oh, check it out because you have all the basics over there. This one is a little bit more complex, but the tools I'm offering you guys are amazing. So stay tuned and watch the full tutorial. Guys, do you want to join a really nice server? We have tons of different channels. We have effects, modeling, loop dev, compositing. We will have resources for every type of discipline. I also have a Patreon page where you can support me. I have every single file, I have polls, I have even some tools, guidance. So if you are interested, you may have a look. Thank you. Okay, so to begin with, I'm going to show you a really simple setup, like a minimum setup here, and then what is happening inside. So the whole setup is this one, but let's start with very brief. So let's make a cube. Let's copy the cube over here and let's edit one. This is going to be used so you see what's going on with the voronoi fracture. So let's set the names. This is basically setting a name, which is going to be called piece, as you can see, piece, a name or each. The only thing it's going to be doing here is setting a class attribute, and the name is going to be set here on primitives, which is just like, well, the name piece plus the integer to string of the class. The class here is the basically the you have like the pieces, and it's just like the number of pieces, right? So it's going to be automatic. And I also saved a name original because when I voronoi this, I want to keep the original attributes all together. Then we are doing a voronoi. The special thing about this voronoi, guys, is that it is based on the minimum size and the maximum size. So you can dial in, as you can see, the distribution of points. You can also set this to be based on groups, like all of the tools I'm creating. Everything has a group in case you want to work linearly. And well, that's it. There's nothing else. Like the only thing that you need to keep in mind, because it's a little bit complex on the inside, is that I'm setting like a measure for the area. I'm setting this to detail on area min, area max, and as you can see over here, I'm promoting this to detail, like the area. So here we have the area, the minimum, and the maximum on all of the pieces, and I'm driving this number of points, which is here, based on a linear interpolation of the minimum and the maximum. If I have 10 points, but if I have 10 points, but my area is of 5, sorry, if I have a maximum of 10 and a minimum of 0, but the object in question is on 5, well, I'm going to have 5 points multiplied by, I don't know, this value over here, as you can see here. Then that same value is going to be set to the scatter. Then it's a simple voronoi with append, nothing else, keeping the inside and outside, merging with existing groups. And I'm transferring all the groups because over here we are losing them. So this is very important if you want to keep like the groups, like previous constraints or previous values that usually they are just being ignored in the voronoi fracture. Then I'm deleting everything that's not area max or area min. This is useless information after this. This is the G and the con. And I'm also, if I'm using a group to separate here, I'm using that one, which in this case I'm not. Then adding a color, unpacking. This is only visualization nodes. You don't need to watch this. And this is the node. To make it simple, you don't need it. You can just do a voronoi fracture, scatter. Let's just add, I don't know, 60 points. Tuki, append. And this is exactly the same. You don't need more than this. This is just because I want to have a custom tool. Then what I'm doing is to just making this a little bit smaller, because it's usually nice to have these spaces. It usually speeds up the simulation. And I'm a constrainter. As you can see, this constrainter is very nice because I can see everything. I can set the values of the clusters of the inside. I'm going to add a scatter so you can see better. As you can see, I can set the constraints of the inside. This is with a scatter. This is without a scatter. And this is blasting the inside faces. What is going on here? Well, basically, I'm going to show it over here. But you can select the colors. For example, let's say I want to keep the scatter and I want to change this to another color to identify it. We are keeping the rest length. We are configuring like the easiest way possible to make a constraint. This is taking care of the cluster attribute. This is very important. Otherwise, it is going to be mixing between all of them. So this is between interclusters, and this is inside or intra-clusters. This is extremely useful and extremely dosable. I mean, you can do pretty much anything. Then I'm keeping the attributes and the groups that I need. Super important. I can isolate like the geometry if I were, for example, well, if I were to have multiple geometries, in this case I didn't, but let's say I'm going to be doing the name original, the piece 1. So I'm only doing this one, as you can see. So I can isolate the geometry. And if I were to have previous constraints like this one, as you can see, how all of these ones, I'm watching all of them. If I isolate the geometry, 1 second, over here, I can show the previous constraints if I were to need them somehow. Usually this is turned off by default and this is turned off by default. You will only be seeing these ones. It doesn't mean that it's not going to show all of them later on. And this is as default. There we go. So after this, what I'm doing is setting the values of the intra-cluster, so inside the clusters, glue, soft, and I'm switching the constraint with this strength and this stiffness. Well, this is all by default. And between the clusters, as you can see, it changes between the clusters, which is the red one. It is also going to be changing, but the value is a little bit easier to manipulate. And finally, I'm just setting more friction, nothing else. Over here, I'm adding a collision. Let's just go backwards so you can see what's happening. It goes down, it bends, and it breaks. Exactly as intended. So then I'm just copying the points. These are points, as you can see. So I'm only manipulating point values here. You will be saving the caches here. And then with these points, I'm going back to here, which would be my deformed geometry before the voronoi, the final voronoi of the fractures, and dividing this to have more resolution. And I'm basically transferring all the deformations of my metal. This has not so many points, but if I were to add, I don't know, 120 points. Oh, it's not bending enough because I should have, hold on, I should have changed this constraint as default in this setup, which is not this one, but this one. There we go. So we have only where needed, nothing else. And now if we press play, it should bend quite more. There we go. See how it's bending? There we go. Nice. Excellent. So what's going on? This is just a trail for the velocity. What's going on for the constraints? Because we can just use our own constraints. So let's go back to where we began here. So there are two ways. of creating the inside and the outside. To begin with, going to the inside, what I'm doing is transferring the name original and then promoting it to points over here. So all of these points will have the name original. I'm looping over all the name originals. So when I see, for example, this one is going to be getting all of my points over here. And what I'm doing is just to connect them based on the settings, which would be these ones. Then I'm just making unique points in case I have duplicates. I mean, I'm just splitting everything. So the constraints are split. And then what I'm doing is if the names of the points are equal, so if they're connected inside the same piece, they're just going to be blasted because it's redundant. If I were to have a constraint, I want the constraint to be between two different pieces, not in the same. So this is just to clean everything a little bit. So I'm doing this on all of them, and I'm creating the intra cluster with the centroid. Then the other way is with this unpacked. I can blast the insides or not. I can scatter or not everything, and I connect them within different things. For example, this is with the other geometry connected. This is only with the insides. See how it changes? And this is with a scatter, which is also changes. So these are like the three different ways you can connect pieces between each other. So I'm going to just keep these ones off. And the same goes for the in-between pieces, exactly the same. You can connect with the boundary over here. So it's only going to be checking between the name original attributes. And then I can do the same, promoting this to primitive, from primitive to point, and I can scatter. So all of these will keep the name attributes and the name originals, and I can connect based on a scatter. And I can also do it with a blast or not. It is exactly the same. You will have the same idea, basically. So you see everything is here connected with constraints. In this case, I would like to do a little bit of a scatter. Do it like that. Let's reduce this quite so much. Oh no, let's just keep the original geometry. And if I were to change this over here, because I'm keeping the same groups, and I forgot to say, but here I'm the inter cluster, so the in-between cluster is breaking, and it's going to be breaking. As you can see, it works the same. So all of this is inside this constrainter. It is the same. It looks a little bit complex, but the only thing is I'm accounting for the geometry. I'm blasting if I need. I'm scattering if I need. I'm promoting the groups if I need. And these are just some fixes. This is exactly the same, as you can see. The same facet, the same codes. Everything is the same. Literally, it's just a way to. It's more of a UI thing than this. With this, you are ready for 95% of this type of solutions. This is just my idea of how I wanted it to be. One last thing is that if I dive inside, we have this thing, which is the metal behavior. What this is doing is first getting the constraint geometry, and there is a code. I'm going to explain briefly. You can copy and paste. I really don't care about this. But have a look. So I'm setting some stuff. The steps, the sub-steps, the time scale, so to get the proper timings. I'm setting some glitch thresholds and how strong it's going to be after it breaks. I'm also storing, if I want to go back to normal, like the original values of the strength, or if I just want to be continue multiplying the strength. And what is the threshold, the timer of this? The step is like how long a frame takes on depending on your FPS. This is the amount of substeps the solver has, and this is like the time scale of your simulation. Everything in an RVD solver. Otherwise, you need to change this. Then I'm saving basically the temporals. If the frame is equal to the original frame plus 1, because we are on the post, or if this just equals to the frame, I should have deleted this. Then if also I want the normal to be equal to the 1, so I'm keeping, I want to go back to original strength, I'm keeping the temporal of the stiffness. This is because in this method, once you break, you are augmenting your strength value, so you are kept the same. Usually that's what you want, unless it is going to be breaking over and over and over. Then, if your constraint name is called soft, you are going to be increasing your timer over here. So each time that you break, you transform into a soft. If you are soft, you are going to be increasing your value. If your new glue, which this is happening downwards, is 1, you are going to be also increasing the step of the timer new glue. Now, these are only the timers. There are 2 timers. And the next constraint logic is if the timer is bigger than the glue thresh, so let's say I want it to be soft for half a second, then your name is going to be changed to glue. Your type is going to be nothing. Your next constraint is going to be also soft again, and the constraint type is going to be all. So you basically change the values of the constraints. You're also adding strength this time, so it's a little bit harder this time to be deleting you. In this case, I decided to use a number 3. So you have 100 of strength, you are going to be having 300 next time. And I'm resetting the timer, so in case I break again. And in case I want to go back to normal, then I'm going to go back to these temporal values and start over. And going back to normal means that if I want to go back to normal and my strength is bigger than my strength temp, and my timer near glue is bigger than my threshold, and I want to go back to normal, so all of these conditions are met, then my strength is going to be equal to my strength temp, and I'm going to be resetting the groups and the timers. That's about it. Read it slowly, and it's not that complex. It's a little bit complex if you're new to Houdini, but actually it's just messing around with the constraints. What was hard was to actually know where to put this behavior. That was really complicated, actually, because everything changed since the RVD solver. And just a quick note, I can set the groups. If I were to want, for example, the groups, it's just if I want to do, for example, this is the GO1, the GO2, I can control whatever I want, even the constraint names. If I were to have an identifier, this is the harden time, so how long it's going to take to harden it, and the multiplier, and this if I want to go back to normal, and how long it's going to be taken to go back to normal. That's it. Okay, so to begin with, we have this water tank over here, as you can see. The only thing that I'm doing is cleaning up a little bit because there were some extra points, transforming it, and splitting the pipes clearly. So welcome guys, and in this case, as you can see, we have this water tank, which what I'm doing is setting it to real scale, and I'm splitting some of this stuff and creating tubes based on these pipes or columns. So I'm fusing everything because there were some errors, as you can see, adding a normal, setting the names. These two can probably be avoided. It's actually the same. Setting the names, if you've seen my previous tutorials, this is only creating a name variable with this setting. And over each of these tubes, I'm just matching size and creating my own tube from scratch and transferring the name because I want to have control over this. So I did this for each of the pieces and I have a new columns. Then I'm separating this, basically just selecting what I want and what I do not want. And over here, what I'm doing is just based on this, I basically drew the curves over here and then resample this just a tiny bit so I can revolve this, reverse it, and have my own water tank. What I'm doing over here is to fuse some of the extra points I have because these were separated, all of these polygons, splitting this, then again creating this floor based on the initial one and fusing everything of these ones so I can then boolean and do the occlusion. Sorry, I'm looking over there because I used to have my camera there. Now I need to only watch to the front. So basically it is very important to have the occlusion or like the boolean of this, because in every RVD simulation, if you have overlapping geometry, it will explode, you know. So this works just fine. And over here, what I'm deciding to do is to continue over here with this protection, fusing, matching size in the center, keeping the touch transform, and creating my own one. I'm just trying to be as precise as possible. Then I'm transferring the X form and matching size again. So I'm replacing one with the other. And I'm setting the names of each of these ones to rail. This is going to be called rail. Over here, this is our water tank. I'm going to blast the inside so I can poly extrude and add some thickness. I'm going to need thickness for this. And that's about it. I'm just added some thickness and output back. Over here, this is the floor, which what I did is boolean, poly extrude, reverse, normal, setting the name to floor. Over here, the only thing that I'm doing here is just getting all these wires from another file and grabbing all of the IDs because it was separated like that, super strange. Cleaning, transforming, fusing again because I was having some issues because I want to create the lines, and with these primitives, which I'm just extending a little bit and doing some polywires and adding normals because this geometry was it was a mess. It was a real mess. I don't need it so much, and I want to control everything. So this is better. And the normals, and these are all of my cables or wires in English. Merging everything, bending it, so I know, so like the structure looks a little bit more interesting. And doing a boolean, so I can have this occlusion, extrude, normal, setting the names. This is the floor. Over here, these are the columns. These are the cables, which are already done, which were named here, but could also be named over here, I guess, like over here instead. This band is just this topper. Oh, and I'm separating the pillar. And over here, I'm just getting them down, blasting it, and getting poly extrude so I can have thickness, reversing it, and normals. And these are the pillars. So this is the first section of the asset preparation. So following, this is the next asset preparation, where I'm just setting some groups and some original names, which I might use later. Doing for all of this. These are cables. These are the cables. This is the floor. This is the tank, and these are the edge, which used to be rail. I mean, I should have kept the names the same. I'm merging everything. There are some extra groups here which I'm not going to be using, but doesn't really matter. And I'm just actually deleting everything just these two, which I don't use. See, as you can see, I deleted them. So I'm not wasting the stuff. So here is the interesting part, as you will see. With this tool, what you can do is to go as shown previously. I'm watching over there, but I should be watching there. You can, as shown previously, what you can do, let me just show you real quick the name, is to start doing a voronoi based on groups. I decided that this ramp had to be like all of them had 30 points. I'm doing the same for the cables over here. Let me just, which is disabling this. Then I'm doing the same for the floor clusters. I'm doing the same for the tank and for the edge clusters. So all of these work. I can oscillate them or not. I can do whatever I want. But this is the first. This is like the first iteration. These are the edges where it's going to be breaking the metal. So this is the first voronoi. Now all of these pieces have to be voronoid again for the simulation. So my name of each is going to be equal to my name. In this case, I'm just making them again. See, name of each is equals to my name. So each piece is going to be remained. So this is my deformed geometry, which is going to be used later on. I'm going to primitive everything. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go one by one again. So everything is linked, as you can see, relatively. So everything is procedural, except here, but over here everything is procedural. I should have done the same here. So I'm just doing a slight voronoi to add some curves. Probably what's going to be the most important are the constraints. In this case, we're not going to be using the constraint here because we're going to use the constrainter, but we're just going to break them. I want to show you how it looks just in case. So this is the good thing about the isolating. It just goes back to normal after the next one. So I'm only doing this and just doing voronoi here and there. I should have done this in this case. It might explode. I hope not. So over here, I should have turned this upwards. Because some of these might not have all of the breakouts I want, but doesn't really matter. So as for the floor voronoi, it's the same. For the tank, it's the same. And for the edge, it's exactly the same. Just different configurations, but overall it's just the same principle. Then I'm making everything a little bit smaller, as you can see, just a tiny bit. This will work so I can have better edge constraints between the between the objects. Let's see everything with the dark lights. So as you can see, I have all my constraints on the pillar. This is based on the edge without blasting the inside. If I blast the inside, it's going to be a little bit worse in this case. I'm connecting points with points of the original geometry on the pillars. I'm isolating the geometry so you can see. Nothing else. On the interclusters, I decided to go for scatter approach. You can use pretty much whatever you want in this case. As for the floor, the best solution was to just use the centroids and a scatter for the edge ones. For the tanks, doing the same thing. This is good enough. Not really going to be needing anything else. If the end result is a little bit wobbly, you can just change the intra-cluster for something else, like this. Of course, with way less constraints, because otherwise it will be very hard to break. So this is just fine for me. In this case, well, exactly the same. These are very small, but they are there. They are there for sure. And on the edge constraints, again, just the same. As you can see, this is a very easy setup. Once you have everything working, it's super simple. And one final, which I'm using everything. See, I'm selecting the edge, the cables, the tank. But here I'm not selecting everything, so I'm basically using everything using the original attributes, the ones I created here before any breakouts. These look like this. Oh, well, let me just correct this just a tiny bit. Let's go to color and random from attribute. So it's going to be creating constraint between these attributes. That's why I'm using it here. There we go. Otherwise, if I use the name rich, the result is going to be changing and creating over everything. But I just want to connect the parts that I need between the parts that I need. So this is it. Just, if you can see, we can watch everything, all of the constraints separately. We can see I did the edge on everything. So it's all fully working. So for this section, in order to get this, what you need to do is to set for the intra, so for the insides of the clusters, some force on the constraints. So you need to set to glue and enable the switch constraints. This is very important to soft. The strength in this case is set to 15 and the soft to 8. For the connections of between the clusters, so the inter clusters, inter meaning in between the clusters, not in between, but between the clusters, I just decided to use a lesser approach so they do not stick so much and they break eventually. And for the pillars, I lower the strengths by 10 times on the primitives. This is a very cool trick. Then for the configure, the only thing that I did is to set the frictions to 0.6 and I guess that nothing else. I packed everything in case I wanted to move it over here and unpacked it. And I went here. And the only thing that I changed are the collision padding, the collision here, also the collision padding of both. The forces, I turned the drag and the spin a little bit. Visualization, well, I could choose anything I want. Constraints, I decide to show the guides, but I can select not to, and I will keep, if I do this, I will keep the original colors. It depends on what you want. Maybe this is a little bit nicer to see, but you will not see the switch, which perhaps you want to see the switch of the guides. And on advanced, the contact breaking threshold and the splitting pulse is changed a little bit, so it is not so flickery on the geometry. This is very cool. There are some pieces going nowhere, which are just points. You can ignore this. And nothing else I can say. The most important part is here on the inside. that I use the metal behavior. And well, this is already explained. I didn't choose anything, so I decided to, well, choose all of them. So here, well, we already know what this is doing. This is by default. By default, it's going to create this result, which is already pretty cool. Pretty cool. Then I'm saving all the points to a cache. This is just called file cache. I forgot to put that better name. And I'm shifting this to the first frame and creating a transform pieces because I want to keep these pieces, to keep everything as optimized as possible. So one thing that I forgot to show you on the constraints is that I decided that the soft and the hard, in this case there is no hard, can be broken, but only if they're inter-clusters, so only if they're between clusters, if the distance threshold is bigger than 0.1. So that's something to keep in mind. This will allow the constraints over here, for example, which are these ones, to be broken. So let me see on the visualization if I show the guides. So the red ones and the yellow ones can be broken, are the only ones that can be broken. As you can see, for example, this one in particular, the green one, didn't break, even though it should have. But that's because we decided that they don't break over here. Something to keep in mind. Very important. So, excellent. So as the final step, what I'm doing is to grabbing the deform object before all of these voronois, dividing this with the breaker. So you can see this. Very cool, very cool. And this will allow me, and also remember, add a rest and a normal rest. This is very important for the shading. And with the RVD deform pieces with the name orange, you can deform this. Very cool. And with a simple trail, I'm calculating the velocity. So now here on Solaris, what I did is first to grab the geometry, the water tank, which is the one of the null. I have all of the geometry that I want. I can select it as I please. For example, I can use the leaf primitive and select all of these pieces separately. Then I'm grabbing the ground, adding the materials. We have the pillars, which are some hex tree planners, some textures. And what I'm deciding to use is the position and normal. For the position, I'm going the rest, which I saved beforehand, the rest position. And for the normal, the rest normals. Then I'm with Ctrl-Shift, Alt, and dragging and creating all of these references. And the only thing that I'm changing is what is this? Just the name of the texture. And I decided to turn the displacement into height to normal because I'm not going to be using displacement for this. And plugging it on the normals, on the specular roughness, and on the base color. That's it. For the tank, it's the same. Just with a little bit more contrast on an inversion on the roughness. And nothing different, just some color corrections here and there. So then I'm linking everything. So the pillars, well, everything which is the rail, the pillar, the floor, the cables, and for the tank, just the tank. So we can see how this works. If we go here and I know, for example, increase the scale, this is what I'm doing. So this was okay. And the same for the tank. This is the color correction. Very cool. And for the roughness, well, I don't think we can see the roughness over here. But then I'm deciding to use a light dome. So I can already see this with Karma. I just decided to use this one. Very nice. Then I created a camera. I think the color space, yeah, this is wrong. I should revert this to factory. Yeah, the color spike here is wrong. So here what I did is to revert this again to aces. I don't know why it got estranged. So if I were to render again, now it's looking a little bit better. Then I decided to animate this camera. Basically, the only thing that I'm doing is to animating the X position a little bit. So I'm following the animation. And also rotating this, so it helps me a little bit with the camera. If I want to turn all of this off, this is the animation it is doing. As for the camera render settings, I decided for the limits of diffuse to be 4 and add some velocity blur. I didn't change anything. This is quite some I don't know, blurry settings, so perhaps doing something like 32 will give us way better results. So let's see what happens. There we go. Very nice. I hope that you liked the video. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I see you there on the next one.